Radiant Fallout. I play guitar, and I also wrote this song, Marked by Obedience. This song is the story of my journey, my spiritual journey. I grew up and I went to a small Baptist church in Balch Springs, Texas, and growing up, you know, I always followed my brother's footsteps. Me and my brother started listening to music together and Christian music together, and you know, I saw him and his friends accept Jesus when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and so I followed them and I walked down the aisle, and I thought it was a cool thing to do, and the old ladies gave you suckers, so I thought it was the best thing in the world to do. And then when I was about 12 or 13, my brother and his friends came around to say they didn't really know Jesus, and I was, once again, I realized if they didn't, that means I must not have. So I walked down the aisle again and went down and prayed this prayer at this youth evangelism conference, and you know, really happy, because I thought, you know, this is it. This is what being saved is like. So when I was 17, the last half of my junior year, I saw those same people who I followed in their footsteps walk away and stop believing what they believed, and I was pretty devastated, and I started really questioning and really hating the things of God and even God himself. I would walk out of our music ministry and walk out on a Sunday morning Sunday bass, go yell at God and just be mad at him, because I thought that if these people's faith wasn't strong enough and he wasn't able to sustain those people, then he wasn't that strong of a God. You know, I always learned to make God a part of my daily life. A 15-minute devotional or anything like that, or you know, just take time and pray. And I always made him a part of my life, and I always wanted God, and I always knew I needed him. But I felt like at the point when I was 17 and just dealing with all this stuff, that I couldn't have it, and it honestly felt like I'd rather die over living without God, because I knew I needed him, but I couldn't have him. I'm refusing to go to church and refusing to be in church, no matter how much my mom thought it was good, and no matter how good I thought it might be. I spent about 2 or 3 months not going to church until this deacon named Tony was being ordained, and he was a good friend of our family, and so I had told my dad I wanted to go. He dropped me off, and I remember I sat in the pew not wanting to be there, but Tony talked about his depression and his longing to, honestly, trying to commit suicide, and how one night God saved him from his depression, and God saved him from all that sorrow and that shame, and changed his life. And I remember sitting in the pew and feeling these tears roll down my eyes, and I knew it was happening, and I wanted it, and it's the first ever time I felt like God was really dealing with my heart and dealing with my life, and breaking me of myself. So after, you know, as I was crying, and he started talking, and he introduced the invitation time, and I remember I ran, or walked, felt like I was running, but I walked up to him and grabbed him, and I began to pray with him and just tell him where I was at in life, and we prayed, and after we prayed, he left, and I stayed at the altar just crying out to God, and honestly telling him, God, how much I love him, and how good it was to be broken of who I was. My whole life, and my whole teenage years, I seemed to make Christ a part of who I was. And, you know, Christ is the King. Christ is the Lord. And to make him only a part of our life is like telling an earthly king or an earthly authority that you're only going to follow part of their rules, and not all of them. And if we do that, then I don't think we understand what obedience really is. So this song, obviously the bridge says, we're marked by his love, and we're marked by obedience, just as Christ is obedient unto death. our life and our calling is to be obedient to Christ and what He has. Always heard things like God needs to be a piece or a part of our life, kind of like a missing puzzle piece, that if you just have Him, you complete the whole thing. But I had to learn that God was more than that. He was more than a piece of the puzzle. He is the puzzle. And without Him, our life is a wreck, not just incomplete. So my whole teenage years, I made Christ a part of my life and not my everything. And it's, you know, Jesus is Lord, and Jesus is called Lord, and Jesus is called a King in the Bible. And for us to say we're only going to follow part of His rule, to be part, have Him be part of our life, to go tell an earthly king that says, hey, I'm only going to follow part of your authority, is really dumb, and it's not right. And we are called to be obedient to God, and Jesus gives us two ways to be obedient. So in Matthew 22:34 through 40, it says, "But when the Pharisees heard that He had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked Him a question to test Him. 'Teacher, what is the great commandment in the law?' And He said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.'" So Jesus told us that we need to love God and love our neighbor. And the song "Marked by Obedience" is out of that heart, that we would learn how to be marked by God's love, not just toward Him, but towards our neighbor and towards everybody here. So I believe those two commandments lead us to know what being marked by obedience looks like.
More than a thought, more than a feeling, more than a piece of my life. You're Lord over all, King of my heart. You're my one desire. I will love You with all of my heart. I will love You with all of my soul. I will love You with all of my mind and all my strength.
Video, and be looking for our song on March 19th. It's available on iTunes and Amazon MP3.
Marked by obedience, just as You were obedient to death.
Marked by obedience. I need to stop hitting my hands. I get so nervous. And yeah, I hope you get to enjoy the song. Yeah, I shouldn't say that stuff because I'm a corny person. Yeah. Anyways.